Alien 3 is what some would consider to be the black sheep of the franchise. Well, they would if Alien Resurrection, Prometheus, or Alien Covenant didn't exist. I guess you could say that in 1992 it was the black sheep of the franchise, and to this day the reception to Alien 3 is more than a little sour. However, what colors discussion of it nowadays isn't really the content of the movie. Now the interest has shifted to the behind-the-scenes drama of getting Alien 3 off the ground, namely the fact that it was a complete shit show, spurred on by, what else, corporate meddling.
1 second. This installation has a substantial dollar value attached to it.
The gist of the situation was that Fox kept passing on Alien 3 scripts for about 4 years, and when they did eventually settle on the final product, they gave very little time to get the movie made. Bro, what's the rush? Aliens came out in 1986, I don't think waiting till 1993 is gonna affect anything. What's more, Fox couldn't help but butting in during the production with such helpful inclusions of, what if the xenomorphs were born out of a dog instead of an ox? Yeah, I'm sure that was worth all the production time and not to mention money to reshoot all that. Should I mention that the chestburster appears to be way too big to have come from a dog? You're doing it anyway, well okay, that will be $500,000 at the minimum, please. The development hell of Alien 3 bears mentioning due to the fact that it dictated a lot of the shortcomings in the movie. But I'm ultimately not that interested. I'm far more interested in talking about the actual end product, because ultimately, that's all that really matters. And you know what? Despite its troubled development, it's a pretty good movie, and well worth watching. Well, thanks for viewing the video. Make sure to smash that like button and share on Dig. Or Dig It, whatever. What the fuck did they call it? Oh, you want me to actually explain myself, huh? Well, okay, if you insist. I myself was just as surprised to find out Alien 3 was an actual quality product. Way back when I bought this Alien quad pack as a teenager, and my friend and I started watching through all of them, and I was honestly a little reluctant to watch past Aliens. I had heard so much bad shit about it, but I already had the pack, so I thought we might as well watch the rest. So I sat down, braced myself for a horrible movie, and to my surprise, I was thoroughly entertained. Not just me, my friend too. Alien Resurrection was actually bad though, so don't be thinking I'm too contrarian, okay? However, I was still iffy on whether or not it was actually a good movie. Maybe my expectations were so low that anything of even slight quality would have entertained me. So I watched it again, and I liked it. Then I watched it another time, and I still liked it. And I kept watching it, and I kept liking it, so I could only come to the conclusion that, yeah, this is a pretty good movie. How could I not think that when the movie starts with all these wonderful shots? I mean, look at all this shit, it's so cool. There's definitely nothing in the first 10 minutes of this movie that could completely derail someone's enjoyment of it. Yeah, elephant in the room time. This obviously turned a lot of people off immediately. I do want to go on the record that I typically hate when sequels do this. Killing off characters that survived previously, especially in the opening of the movie, totally negating the ordeal they faced in the earlier installment, always feels more than a little disrespectful. However, I'd say Alien 3 is different in this regard. And to explain my thought process, I need to explain the tone of the movie. Namely the fact that it's fucking bleak. Not that the previous movies were a picnic by any means, but they definitely had their lighter moments. I mean, compare the beginnings of each Alien movie up until this point. Sure, they're dreary, but there is a sense of order and companionship to the crew of the Nostromo, as well as the Colonial Marines, giving us more lighthearted openings as compared to the rest of the movie. Not Alien 3, everything is totally miserable from the get-go. I mean, the movie starts with killing off the rest of the surviving cast from Aliens. Doesn't get much more bleak than that. The first couple times I saw Alien 3, this aspect didn't negate my enjoyment by any means. But I did disagree with the choice to kill Hicks, Newt, and Bishop. A part of me didn't want to see these characters be unceremoniously killed off. but another part of me thought it would serve the script better. As in my mind, Hicks sacrificing himself to stop the alien, and Newt, perhaps even Bishop, surviving along with Morse at the end would have been more satisfying. Honestly, before I looked into it, I thought the only reason they did this was that there was some kind of corporate issue in getting Michael Biehn back, so Fox decided just to do a clean cut with the characters from the last movie for simplicity's sake. But no, this was part of the settled on script, so this was the plan from the start. After considering it for a while, I have come to the conclusion that it was necessary to kill off the rest of the survivors. Ripley having familiar companions that she could confide in and trust would have severely cut down on the bleak, desperate tone the movie's going for. I came to the exact same conclusion about Clemens. I initially thought he should have stuck around for more of the movie, so we could have a relatable character besides Ripley. However, I realized that Ripley having to work with and rely on people who don't like her, nor can she really trust, works far more to the movie's benefit. Look, at the end of the day, I'm still not crazy about totally negating the hopeful ending of Aliens, but you have to recognize that the version of Alien 3 that they ultimately went with needed this to happen. Now, the other burning question is how this movie should have handled the alien itself. Aliens had a significant increase in scope when compared to Alien, and I think most people can agree that topping Aliens in terms of being a better action movie was never gonna happen. Say what you will about the people in charge, but it is a rare thing for them to recognize that sometimes less is more. They actually made the smart decision to pare down the scope. They could have easily gone, "Aw dude, we're gonna make alienses. And this time there will be 2 queens. And Bishop will be a badass cyborg with a minigun. Hell yeah, brother." Like the first film, we're back to 1 alien, and without any proper way of dealing with it. In fact, the situation is worse than the original movie in terms of armaments. The alien itself is also different. Born from a dog or ox, depending on what version you watch, it's now quadrupedal, faster, and more animalistic. In terms of the plot, this is a relatively small change. But this is the first and only time that the films expanded on the concept of the xenomorph's characteristics changing depending on the host. I also like that it's a pretty subtle change. It isn't some crazy fucked up looking design that Geiger had nothing to do with. It embodies all the elements from the original, but just a little different is all. I've heard the argument that it's perhaps a bit too subtle, and half the time you can't even tell that the thing is different at all. This is true, but I think the bigger culprit is the tricks of the trade. Like the previous 2 movies, a lot of close-ups and quick cuts are used to simultaneously be more scary, while also not breaking the illusion that it's either a guy in a suit or a prop. Still, maybe they could have used some more wide shots to really sell the fact that this alien was Okay, maybe they shouldn't have done that. Yeah, other elephant in the room are the bad effect shots the alien is subject to. Most people think this is terrible CGI, but it's actually not. They use practical puppets in front of a green screen. What you're actually seeing is just really bad compositing. Ironically, as far as I can tell, the only CGI used on the alien was it cracking at the end. That actually looks really good. What's truly a shame is that a lot of the movement looks nice. Not all of it, mind you, but most. It's just this awful green tint it has in every one of these shots. I don't need to explain why this doesn't work. In terms of the actual look of the movie, this is probably the biggest casualty of the rushed development, because I have no doubt in my mind this could have been fixed if they were given enough time. So far, I've been doing a sort of back and forth with complimenting the movie and portraying its flaws. Well, no more of that shit. Here's why the movie is fucking good, and I like it. Damn it. First of all, it looks great. Just look at the direction, the scene composition, the sets, the matte paintings. It's all really amazing. It's clear the director knew what he was doing. Gee, I wonder why. You might be thinking, well, Alien and Aliens look good too. Yeah, that's true, but it's not a given that a movie, especially a sequel, will look good at all. It's clear to me, and this goes for anyone with eyeballs, that Alien 3 wasn't being phoned in. That being said, a movie can't survive on its visuals alone. So, how are the characters? And by that extension, how is the dialogue? In my humble opinion, pretty goddamn good. There isn't a scene in this movie that didn't compel me with its dialogue. It's all pretty great, and I was always interested in what anyone had to say. Even with characters that seemingly just kinda appear and disappear from the movie at will. Which, don't worry, I'll get to that. Here's an example of how well this is done. There's a character in this movie nicknamed 85. He's called 85 because that's his IQ. In a lesser movie, this character would be a complete write-off. He'd either be a complete asshole or inappropriate comic relief. He's neither in Alien 3. Despite the fact that he's slow on the uptake, he's written and portrayed as an actual character. All of his actions and motivations are completely understandable, and at no point did I ever despise him. Or for that matter, even dislike him, even when he is actually in the wrong. Again, this all might seem like a given, but it's really not. There are good movies that don't accomplish the goal of having every dialogue scene be interesting, and maybe I wouldn't be so compelled to tell you about it if Alien 3 wasn't made out to be the worst thing that happened to the Alien franchise up until Covenant. I can't stress how good it is. I just love all of the dialogue in this movie. I don't care who's actually speaking at any given moment, I just want to hear more of it. In fact, I think it's better than the first two movies. Obviously, Alien and Aliens have great dialogue as well. However, it's somewhat utilitarian in nature. It's very snappy and keeps the pace up, which makes sense for those movies. Alien 3 has a lot more downtime, which makes sense. Our main character is literally immune to the most immediate threat in the movie. It also has a lot more themes to play with than the last two. Rehabilitation, rebirth, sacrifice, all through the lens of religious doctrine. Speaking of religion, the aspect of the religious prisoners is such a cool and frankly integral part of Alien 3. I feel like a broken record at this point, but this aspect could have also been completely one note and not worth anyone's time. Some are clearly in control of themselves, while others not so much. And it's a constant tug of war between sticking to their values or submitting to their dark desires. It's through these prisoners that we get one of the most badass characters in all of the Alien franchise, in the form of Dylan.
Take off. I gotta re-educate some of the brothers.
It's genuinely criminal that this guy isn't put on the same level as some of the other great supporting characters in the franchise, because frankly, he deserves it. Okay, I think I've gushed about the movie enough, but I'm going to be blunt here. I really don't even feel like I should have to explain why this movie is good. I get why someone wouldn't like Blair Witch 2, for example, as it intentionally throws the audience for a loop. And I can understand not liking Alien 3 as much as the last two. But outright despising it, screaming from the rooftops that it's the worst thing ever, now that I don't get. It slots in so well with the two previous movies. It just feels like an Alien movie. It's especially perplexing when we have much, much worse examples of Alien movies. Now, I don't really like to attest to a film's quality by comparing it to something worse. Actually, Police Academy 6 isn't that bad, because Police Academy 7 is truly awful. No, that's not how it works. A movie doesn't magically become better because its sequel was worse. I think it just serves as a good point of comparison. We know what a cash grab Alien sequel looks like with Resurrection. Sure, it mimics the style of Alien, but it clearly lacks the substance. We also have an example of a complete clusterfuck, what the hell were you even going for here, with Alien Covenant. This is all to say we know what a bad Alien sequel looks like, and when compared to Alien 3, it's very clear that it isn't one. People cite the development hell the movie went through as some kind of objective measure as to why the movie sucks, but that's not really true at all. All the development hell really was the studio passing on scripts for 4 years. When they finally settled on one, they rushed production and made the shoot hell, which was the real problem. However, a shoot being shitty isn't really that unusual. Terminator, Star Wars, Jaws, all these movies were rife with problems. Honestly, all of the issues Alien 3 suffered served as a perfect storm in making this sequel unique. The studio hired David Fincher because they thought he was going to be a yes man who would do anything that they wanted. They couldn't have been more wrong, though, because not only was he a big fan of the first two movies, he was David Fincher. So he obviously fought them on every bad idea they had. Sigourney Weaver was also fed up with being the face of this franchise, so the only way she would do the film was if they killed off Ripley, as the script originally had her once again escaping. Ripley sacrificing herself at the end of the movie is pretty powerful stuff. Even if the special effects themselves are bad, the point is still gotten across. Killing off your main character is a pretty bold move. Not only that, it represents a definitive end to Ripley's story, and some might argue the Alien franchise as a whole. That's me, I argue that. So because this movie was in development hell, we have a sequel that doesn't play it safe at all. And on top of that, it just happened to be directed by an auteur. If you don't believe me on how much worse it could have been, then I have the perfect example to illustrate my point. Terminator 3.
Talk to the hand.
If you're unaware, T3 also went through development hell, and it's fucking awful. They got a no-name director and a no-name writer, and it shows. Why don't I just play you a clip? The movie looks like shit, it's edited like shit, the dialogue is terrible, and it just regurgitates the plot of T2. This is what the average, we gotta make another one, looks like. Comparing it to something of quality is night and day, so the development hell doesn't really matter. What matters is the actual talent behind the film. Look, I get it, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. David Fincher was so fed up with Alien 3 that he didn't stick around for the editing process. So while Fox didn't have total control of the filmmaking, they did have total control of the edit. It's very clear that there was definitely a bit of butchering going on. You get thrown into scenes with characters you know very little about or haven't even seen before, making their deaths pretty meaningless. The character of Gallic completely disappears from the movie halfway through, and you never find out what happened to him. Corporate meddling always sucks, and it sucks that it happened here. Still, the base of the movie is so good that even Fox's grubby little hands couldn't ruin it. They just lessened it. So at the end of the day, Alien 3 is a really good movie, but undoubtedly a flawed one. Is what I would say if the assembly cut didn't exist. In 2003, all of the movies got special editions. Alien and Aliens, well, that was just more of a good thing. Alien 3, on the other hand, needed this. After watching the theatrical cut and then the assembly cut, I can only describe the experience as
I can see clearly now, the rain is gone.
If base Alien 3 is a good movie, well, the assembly cut makes it a great movie. It fixes everything. The lacking characterization of the prisoners, the vagueness of characters appearing and disappearing from the movie. They even fix up the shoddy compositing. Well, for the most part. We also get a brand new opening sequence which is leaps and bounds better than the theatrical cut. I mean, look at these shots. Gorgeous. The only issue with it, and this is such a nitpick, is that this guy still calls out to his dog here. Presumably because there wasn't a version of this scene shot while it was still an aux. This is a pretty bad sequence anyway. It's obvious what's gonna happen to this guy the moment you lay eyes on him, and because of that, it's pretty boring. I also never understood why this guy thought his dog was in a ventilation shaft in the first place. Like, why would you assume that is your dog? Much like Alien 3 itself, I was totally caught off guard by the assembly cut the first time I watched it. The reason for that was whenever I heard anything about it, it was always implied that it was only slightly better. A kind of take it or leave it type of thing. And it didn't really change that much, and in fact was worse in some ways. You must be smoking crack if you can't recognize that this fundamentally changes the movie. I understand if you hate Alien 3 to its core, yeah, this probably isn't going to change your mind. However, if you like Alien 3, I can't understand the perspective that the assembly cut isn't just a straight upgrade. The only concrete thing I noticed people saying on why the theatrical cut was better or not just kind of vagaries was that they liked the alien being born from the dog instead. Who fucking cares? I've been gushing about Alien 3 this entire video. I genuinely like the theatrical version. However, after seeing the assembly cut, I recognize that it is a cut down, inferior version of what the real product is. And the assembly cut is that real product. Or at least as close as it's ever gonna be. And if you hate the fact that this is such a dreary end for everyone, don't sweat it too much. This franchise is so fucked up at this point, I don't even know if Alien 3 is canon anymore. At one point, Colonial Marines was supposed to be the new canon sequel. Yeah, I can hazard a guess that isn't the case anymore. Plus, there are plenty of alternatives to Alien 3 at this point. The original Dark Horse run of the Alien comics is a pretty good continuation of the story after Aliens. And the original William Gibson script has been turned into a novel, a graphic novel, and an audio drama. However, I'd probably recommend the audio drama if you just want to hear the script pretty much verbatim. Look, I'm not claiming that you're gonna like Alien 3 as much as Alien or Aliens. But at the end of the day, it's a sequel that feels in line with the rest of the franchise while also being distinct and good. And to me, that's all I can really ask for. While I was editing this video, the teaser trailer for Alien Romulus came out, and yeah, I cannot bring myself to give a shit at all. Alien Romulus? How about motherfucking Alien Rhombus? Yeah, then I'll go see it.
I squeeze, yeah, I squeeze, yeah, I squeeze, yeah, I squeeze, yeah, I squeeze.